Welcome to The Struggle is Real, a show for 20-somethings that are trying to figure out adulting. I'm your host, Justin Peters. Each episode, we focus on solving a problem that we will face throughout this defining decade that wasn't covered in the classroom. This could include topics about our career, health, relationships, and money. Let's get into it. Hey, you. Welcome to The Struggle is Real podcast, and I'm your host, Justin Peters. I'm assuming the job you have now isn't the position you want forever. Most of us hope that as we learn new skills and take on more responsibility, we will get the opportunity to move up within our company. But why do some people seem to get the opportunity for promotions while others find themselves in the same role for years and years? Well, my guest today is going to talk about that. He believes that it all starts with doing the little things right, like being dependable. We'll also get into managing employees that are older than you and how to find a company that you can grow with. I'm excited for you to meet Mason Burchette, who started out as a technician at Best Buy Metals making $11.50 an hour, and now, 7 years later, is their director of marketing and development. Seeing his fast growth in such a short period of time, many of his friends and family started asking him for advice. Through that, he ended up writing his first book, How to Make Sure You Never Get Promoted, an antithetical guide to succeeding in your career. He also regularly shares his insight as a Forbes contributor and is the co-host of the Crush It podcast. Oh, and he's married with 2 kids. This guy blows me away. So let's get into it. I hope you enjoyed my conversation today with the satirical author, 26-year-old director, cancer survivor, Mason Burchette. Mason, my man, what's going on?
Man, we are just hanging out, loving life.
I know. Thanks for the reschedule too. I know it's been a crazy week for me. This has been like, I know this has got to be the highlight of my week. I've been super excited about bringing you on the podcast, having a conversation with you ever since you and I got connected like 3 or 4 months ago. So I'd like to kick things off actually with why have you never been happier to have a bad haircut?
Dude, so that's a whole story, man. Yeah, last year I I never went to the doctor, right? I'm like the guy that's not been to the doctor since he's 4 years old or whatever. And just had some like weird off the wall health issues going on randomly. So I'm like, let's go to the doctor. Let's check it out. And go to the doctor. And he's like, I'm going to send you to a urologist. I was like, okay, cool, great. You know, that's never a good sign. So we go to the specialist like 2 days later, and he's like, yeah, you have cancer, man. And so yeah, it's just like, you always hear the stories of people getting diagnosed with cancer, and it's like these really sentimental, touching. Like, oh, I'm so sorry, sir. He was just like, yep, that's definitely cancer. And I was like, okay, so here we are. And that kicked it off, man. So I had surgery like 3 days later, started chemo not long after that, lost all my hair. And it took what felt like forever for my hair to come back. And it like grew weird. So like the sides of my hair were super long, the top was super short. So I had to go get it cut. And so it looked terrible. And that's why I was never happier to have a bad haircut.
That's amazing. What I actually host another show that's all about cancer survivorship, and I've never once had an introduction or a doctor lay out cancer like that. But I'm assuming it wasn't all laughs there. What was your initial feeling whenever you heard the word cancer?
I don't know, man. It was kind of like you went Deep Space Nine for a second, because I suspected something because I had already been to an ultrasound prior to this, right? And me being the nosy guy that I am, I was like, hey, I paid for this ultrasound. I want the ultrasound report. So they gave me the ultrasound report, and it said malignancy by exclusion, which means we don't know what this is, so it must be malignant, right? And so I was like, oh man, I probably got cancer or something crazy. And so the next day, the urologist was like, yep, definitely cancer. And so I was like, okay, confirmed what I was thinking. So I had already kind of mentally prepared myself for the C word, right? Right out of the gate, I was just like, crap, now I got to tell my wife and my mom that I've got cancer, and they're going to freak out. And I wish they did. And it was good. And, but it was really the days after that. I mean, there was definitely some days after work, where I just like sat in my car and was like, holy crap, I've got cancer, like I've got cancer right now. So it was pretty surreal. And there's probably a lot of that I still have it unpackaged in my mind and probably never will.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like it was life threatening, or was there always reassurance that, chemo
Yeah.
would take care of this and this was just going to be a stage?
There, so there was testicular cancer, which is super fun for any guy to consider, right? And the thing about that, which is why the diagnosis was so blunt, is you can't biopsy, you can't poke it around, you can't prod it, because the nature of testicular cancer is it spreads rapidly if you start poking at it. So it's pretty much all it ever is when there's certain signs there. And so all they can do is just rip the whole thing out, man. They cut right into your stomach, rip the whole thing out. It's gruesome, but pull that out of there. And so there is with testicular cancer, it gets into your blood and it'll either land in your lymph nodes or it'll land in your lungs. So post surgery, you have to recover from surgery, and they analyze the tumor, and then you have to go for CT scans, chest X-rays to see if it's in your lungs, right? And so there's a period there. There's a window where you're scared. Is it in my lungs, right? Did it metastasize anywhere else? And that can open up. If it is, that can open up a whole different scenario where how far is it in your lungs? Lung cancer is a lot harder to treat than just if it's isolated, And so luckily mine was not, it was not in the lungs that they could tell had not spread to the lymph nodes. But, there was a good 2-3 weeks there where we didn't really know. And so you're just running through all those scenarios in your head, wondering whether or not you are going to die or whether you're going to live. And so you definitely have some soul searching there, man. And with a wife and 2 young kids too. It's like, can I go to get my life insurance in order, make sure all my stuff's buttoned up here, because you never know. It was surreal. It was surreal.
Was there any questions, realizations, action items that came out of that 2 or 3 week period whenever you started
100%.
questioning things?
100%. Like I can remember even being in the doctor's office the day that I got diagnosed. One of the first thoughts that came into my head was a question I felt like I was asking myself. And this sounds super cliche, but I swear to God, this is how it happened in my head. I was like, have I done enough to be proud of at this point in my life? And it was like an easy no. I was like, heck no, like no way. I'm not, I have not done everything that I should have done yet. And that was a sobering moment, because then I started thinking, when this is over, if I pull through this, what am I going to change? What am I going to do if this happens again, if it comes back, that if I ask this question again, am I going to be able to say yes, right? Like, what am I going to change right when this is over to be able to say yes next time?
Hmm. Yeah. So what's on that short list now? Is there anything that has been bumped up, or do you feel like you're currently on the path? You just need more time.
Well, you always need more time, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you feel like you're facing a scenario where you're not going to have any more. You always want more time. And so I think really what came out of it, because I wasn't doing any of the wrong things. I wasn't being lazy. I'm a super driven person. I felt like I was already pushing as hard as I could go, but it was maybe more of a reprioritization. Like I said, I do have a wife, I do have 2 young kids, and being driven for success and career minded and goal driven. That was most certainly the first thing that came into my mind was, have I spent enough time with them? Have I invested in, because they're my legacy, right? I mean, I'm building a career. That's part of my legacy. But at the end of the day, my 2 little kids are the ones that are going to take daddy's legacy and do something with it when he's gone. So that was probably the most that I took out of it. That's where my focus needs to be. It's where the majority of my investment needs to be, right? I'm not going to back off the career stuff, not going to back off the goal setting and the success. But goal setting, success, and career all involve pouring into my kids. So that was a cool moment.
Yeah. And it's always really cool to see how people respond to situations like this. And 2 people that I was really surprised, and maybe it shows that you're in the right spot, was your CEO and your COO.
Yeah.
How did they respond whenever you showed back up at work? And I know I've heard you talk about that moment after meeting with them, that first meeting back.
Yeah, it was super blessed to be at the company that I'm at for sure. They were more than gracious throughout the entire process, and we really are a family over there. They took good care of me and my family while I was down. But yeah, having to tell them, you know, I'm going to be out, I've got cancer. Um, the first question they asked is, what can we do for you? You know, don't worry about the job. What can we do for you? And not a lot of people have that luxury. Um, but I do, thankfully. And so, yeah, after I came back, you know, it was funny because I wanted to get back to work, man. I hate being down. I hate being out. And I was going crazy, um, sitting in my recliner. And so I went back to work probably a little too early. Right. So I had, you know, surgery, was out for 5 days. And then the eighth day I was wobbling back into work, you know, still with a little internal bleeding and whatnot. But I was like, I sit in a chair, I'm going to go back to work. So I went back to work and they were like, should you be here right now? Should you? I was like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And my blood count was super low. Right. And wound up starting my chemo and was trying to still work through the chemo, and wound up getting neutropenia and pancytopenia, where like all of your blood cell counts just bottom out, zero out. So everything was sub-zero. And I got this tooth infection. And I was like, oh crap, you know, tooth infection, no big deal. I'm going through chemo. You know, infections are a bigger deal when you're going through chemo. And I was like, no big deal. Not going to worry about it. So like 3 days later, it is raging, dude. And it is like intense. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to go to the dentist. I go to the dentist and he's like, yeah, this is not good. Here, take these pills. Take the pills. Like that night, I'm like burning up with fever, like, you know, sweating through the mattress. And my wife's like, you're dying. We're going to take you to the hospital. And so this is like in the middle of the night. Matt, my good friend, comes to my house, stays with my kids. My wife takes me to the hospital. I was there for 8 days or something like that. And uh, wound up going through all kinds. That was definitely the worst experience of the whole thing, is those 8 days in the hospital. I definitely thought I was gonna die there. But when I came back, I was like, once again, I'm gonna get back in the saddle. I'm gonna get back to work. And my COO was like, you're never coming back to work again until I get like a handwritten letter from your doctor that you are going to live. And so he would not let me come back at that point, for several weeks, until everything was back to normal, and sprigs of hair were coming back. Like he wanted everything to be normal again. So
Yeah, so you've been at this company since you were 17,
yeah.
Best Buy Metals. The
Mm-hmm.
career path you've taken is really inspiring to see. And you know, I'll rattle off it here: technician to inside sales rep to warehouse manager to assistant manager to general manager to business development manager to director of marketing and development.
Yeah.
7 years, or 7.5 years, seven different positions. What do you think led to your quick rise at Best Buy Metals?
I've certainly never been bored here. That's for sure. Um, and I got this job. Actually wasn't my first job. My first job was in a construction company, working a shovel. You know, I was a shovel technician digging holes, and it was back-breaking work. And I'm glad I did it now because I have appreciation for the job I have. But I was like, I don't want to do this forever, and this sucks really bad, because I was like 16, you know, turning 17, and my brother was like, hey, this place is opening up the road. You should check it out. It's inside, you know, you don't have to work out in the rain. And so I was like, very dark. I'll probably get skin cancer from that one day. I'm sure I'm a prime candidate for it, but from being out in the sun all the time. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to work inside. So I got that, applied for the warehouse job. It was just like a pulling inventory, man, stocking inventory, pulling inventory, loading customers, super basic. And I get that job. And the day that I got it, so I went and applied for it, went back to work, and I'm running a skid steer, which is like a little bobcat. I don't know if you know what those are, front end loader kind of
Yeah.
deal. And I'm running that, and we're working on a job outside of a grocery store, and the guy calls me that I interviewed with. And so I can't hear because the machine's loud. So I stop it, and I'm like right in the middle of the road. I stop it, turn the machine off, and I answer it. He's like, "Hey, yeah, we want to go ahead and give you the position." And I was like, "Oh, great." And my boss was like, "Get out of the road, get the machine out of the road." And I was like, "I'm quitting." so I left and started the other job. And yeah, man, it wasn't long before thankfully I realized that there was a unique opportunity. The company was in a growth stage, right? So this was the third facility that it had launched. I'm the first one out of state. So the home office was in Tennessee. I was in Asheville, North Carolina. And I was like, okay, there's definitely an opportunity to move up. I didn't realize how much of an opportunity. I was thinking, get on the sales desk and do something. My dad was a salesman in the building materials industry. This was the building materials industry. It seemed like something I could do. And so I started working hard in the warehouse and dressing the right way. My peers are wearing cut up t-shirts and jeans with holes in them. So I'm wearing like nice jeans, wearing a polo, tucking my shirt in, just trying to do the little things right. And coming in early, staying late. I don't think I was ever late a day in my life there. It's just not the way I was raised. And it worked out. So he wound up giving me a shot. The general manager gave me a shot in inside sales. So I did some inside sales for a little bit, and excelled at that. That facility grew to the point that we needed some leadership in the warehouse. I had already worked in the warehouse. I had been trained on some of those machines. And so they were like, "Hey, would you manage the warehouse?" And so I was like, "Sure, yeah, I'll manage the warehouse." So I actually went back to the warehouse and became the warehouse manager. And I don't remember, that was probably year 2, 3. And we actually transitioned to general managers from that facility. And I kind of like interim assistant manager of the facility while the general manager was cutting out of there. And that store had done really well, and the owner decided he wanted to expand again and open another facility in Greenville, South Carolina. And that store had been profitable already. And if I pat myself on the back, I think I had run the warehouse pretty well, and had a good reputation as a young guy that was catching on. And so, surprisingly enough, the owner came to me and approached me because I was looking at buying a house. I was dating my wife now. She was my girlfriend then, and I was like, I'm thinking about proposing, buying a house, settling down, having a couple kids, blah blah blah. And he caught wind of it, and he called me, and he's like, "Hey, maybe don't buy that house yet." And like, that's all I said because he's super cryptic. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You'll see. And so I keep plugging away, and he comes down, and he's like, I'm buying a facility in Greenville, South Carolina, and I'd like you to consider going down there and opening it and being the general manager. I think I'm like 21, about to turn 22 at this point. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, let me think about it. And inside I'm like, duh, I'm definitely doing this. And so we do it. He buys it. We go down there, scope it out. We renovate the whole thing. I started up, and that was definitely the trial of my life. Moving my family, young family, because I wound up getting married. And because that process took a little bit of time, wound up getting married and didn't waste any time getting pregnant with our daughter. And so we moved down there, and uh, me, her, and our little kid, and started that facility. 22-year-old. I'm hiring guys that are twice my age, and trying to build a team around me and earn their respect as a young buck. I mean, because I still look like a kid. You can imagine when I'm almost 27 now. I was 22 then. I looked like a bag boy at the grocery store, and I'm hiring these guys, giving them opportunities. And so that was the trial of my life, man. I was down in Greenville for 2 years running that facility, and we built that place up, and decided to open another one again in Charlotte. And he moved me over to Charlotte for 3 months to start that facility. And my assistant manager there in Greenville took over, and I was like, well, I either don't have a job anymore, or or we're going to have another opportunity. And they approached me to move to the corporate office here in Cleveland, Tennessee, take over marketing and development. So that's the condensed version of that story.
No, thanks. Thanks for sharing that. You mentioned having to hire and manage people that were twice your age.
Yeah.
What do you feel like led you to gain respect from those colleagues? Because there's no way you can execute the way that you've executed without having
Mm,
respect for those older colleagues. Was there, if you could
yeah.
pinpoint one or two things about your personality or work style or something that might have led you to success there, what would you say?
Uh, and this may sound a little brash, but don't take their crap, right? And I say that because I'll qualify that here in a second, but I say that because especially when you're any manager will face this when they're building a new team, especially when you're a young manager. Instantly you're going to get tested right out of the gate. They're going to see how far they can push you. They're going to see how they can, because most of these guys had kids my age, right?
Mhm.
And they're going to see if they can run over you. I got to leave early today. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to be off this day, and see if they can get away with it. So you had to quickly establish yourself. And because we've seen this with other young managers that weren't able to do it, you have to quickly establish yourself in those first several weeks, first several months, or you're going to set a precedent that you're a pushover, right? And they'll never respect you, and the store will never be a success. So I had to quickly, which was hard for me because I'm definitely an introvert at heart, but I had to establish myself as somebody that wasn't going to get run over. Um, and you also have to have a mindset that the way you deal with one individual affects the rest of the team, right? And that was something I learned early on, thankfully, from being somebody who loves to read.
I hope you're enjoying today's conversation with Mason Burchette. Before we get back to the show, I want to share with you the opportunity to win a free copy of Mason's book, How to Make Sure You Never Get Promoted, an antithetical guide to succeeding in your career. All you need to do is share this episode on your Instagram story and tag me at Justin Lee Peters. I'll pick one winner before my next episode release. Looking forward to seeing your post. Now back to the show. And you also go from making 1150 to start with an hour, which
Yeah.
comes out to like something like 23,000. And I'm assuming now as the director of marketing and development, you make a whole lot more than that.
Yes.
But you really, I mean, you have a family, you have two young daughters now. I'm a,
Son and a daughter.
yeah, son and a daughter.
Yep.
Um, you're set up. What's your thought process on taking the next opportunity, especially with a move in there? Was money the incentive in that piece to it? Because if you got the money already, what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
really kind of curious on how you're deciding to uproot your family and move. What was the
Yeah.
conversations like, and what was your decision making process there?
Yeah. I mean, I think anybody would be a liar if they say money doesn't factor into it. It always will. It was a unique week that I had, the week that I was offered the position here at Best Buy Metals to move to corporate and be on the executive team. I actually was being courted by another company that the same week I got this offer, they had flown me to Madison, Wisconsin, and made me another offer for a significant amount, right?
Mm.
And so I had flown back. I literally flew back into Charlotte, North Carolina, got off the plane, went, changed my clothes, drove to the restaurant to meet the CEO and COO of Best Buy Metals so they could give me the offer. So I was feeling like I was rolling right there that day, but the the money at that point could not be the only deciding factor because they were similar offers. And so it was definitely, what does the opportunity look like here? And I was going to be moving either way, right? So at this point, I lived in Greenville, South Carolina. I take the job with one company, I have to move to Charlotte. I take the job with the other, I have to move to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it was a relatively easy choice for me. The investment that I had made here, I did not feel like I wanted to risk losing. There's a certain amount of security you have when you've invested the first, at that point, 5.5 years of your life into something. So the opportunity for continued growth was certainly the main driver in my decision. We were definitely okay moving again. We never anticipated that Greenville, South Carolina would be our forever home. And even on a personal note, moving away from our families was the best thing we ever did for our marriage. So we were totally cool with the move. It was definitely the long-term opportunity that was the driving factor.
Makes sense. And now you go out and write a book too.
I mean, I was bored. So.
I know. Go through cancer. Got the podcast going. You're building a
Yeah.
brand there. I'm assuming you're busy at work as well, getting caught up there, and it's probably just a continuous cycle of busyness. 2 young kids. You got a lot going on. Why write a book?
Yeah, I love providing value where I can, and I'm hopefully will be a lot farther than I am right now later on in my later years, but I've achieved a certain amount of success. I'm not trying to brag, but I have. That some would say is unusual for people my age, especially the area I grew up in. Right, I grew up in the backwoods of Western North Carolina. Right, we were, and nothing wrong with trade jobs. We were diesel mechanics. We were those kind of things, which is great. We need those guys, but that's where my vision was when I was that age. When I went to community college, I went to be a diesel mechanic, right? So that's what I started to do. And so, being able to transition my mindset uh, to reprogram that and want a different level of success, this is something that anybody can do, right? And I've had people that I grew up with be like, "Hey, what did you do to get where you're at with your company? What did you do to do that? What did you do to get that car? What did you do to get that house?" And it's not rocket science. It's really just some basic principles that I followed. And so that's why I wrote the book, and I called it "How to Make Sure You Never Get Promoted." Which is just satire. I tell you what not to do, so you know what to do. And literally just watched peers that I used to work with that never made the cut. I learned from their mistakes, and then I definitely made plenty of my own mistakes that I learned from. And then, thankfully I did a lot of things right and learned from those as well. And I just wanted to put all of those into paper, and if for nothing else, just for the community that I grew up with and the people that I already know could see some of the short answers to the questions I've been asked along the way.
Hmm. And I saw that you dedicated the book to Nick.
Yeah.
Was this your friend that you lost in 2020?
Yeah. Yeah. So Nick was a good buddy of mine. We actually worked together at Best Buy Metals, and, we were gym buddies, and he was a good, close personal friend of mine. And he suddenly, unexpectedly passed away of a heart attack. And so, he was had some struggles in life and was really trying to dig out of them and pursue career success and, do the better things. And so it was tough to see, him die so young and so early. So I dedicated the book to him.
Hmm. That's super cool. Yeah, I noticed that, and I was trying to make that link there. I wasn't sure if that was him or not, but
That was
that's
him.
that's really
Yep.
cool of you to do. So in part of the book, you talk about finding a fast growing company or
Mhm.
a company with opportunity. And one of the
Yeah.
quotes was, the first and most important step to carving out a career path is finding a company that you can actually grow in.
Mhm.
So what's your advice for someone that is transitioning into a career to evaluate or find that such company?
Yeah. If you're already with a company that you think has a viable growth plan, or that you would like to see if they do, what you should do is look around at the people that are already in positions you would like to move up to eventually, um, and see how they got there. Right? Were they promoted from within, or is everybody in leadership hired from the outside? That's an immediate question that you can answer for yourself. If all leadership, as a general rule, is typically hired from the outside or poached from other companies where they're already serving in those positions, you're going to be hard pressed to be able to move up, in any reasonable length of time. And so, as was the case in the company I work for, they looked within before they ever looked outside the company and said, "Are there people with talent that we can grow? That have our core values that we can grow and teach these skills to fulfill these positions." And that's a fair question to ask if you're in the interview process. I would most certainly feel comfortable asking my future and potential employer, do you like to promote within, or are these positions that you only fill from the outside?
Interesting. Anything else that you notice in companies that might be especially great for young professionals that are entering their career and, like you, looking for growth, maybe not stability,
Mhm.
more so they're okay with making moves often, or making both horizontal or lateral moves,
Mhm.
physical moves. Like what other qualities of great companies have you seen, especially for young adults?
Culture. By far, culture, you got to, the first and most important thing you need to look at is the culture of the company. And this is the mushy stuff that everybody's like, nah, culture, core values. Blah, blah, blah."
Yeah, I struggle here because I'm not entirely sure how to always give advice on how to vet out culture,
Mhm.
especially during the interview process. I mean, you
Mhm.
get to know the culture once you get into the company, and for your first 90 days, you can see how they make decisions, who makes decisions, where are the funnels at, what do they
Mhm.
value in the company, etc. But how could they potentially do that before being coming on board?
Yeah. You got to remember when you're in the interview process, you're being interviewed for the job, but you're also interviewing the company, right? And so I recommend asking your employer if it's okay for you to talk to other members of the team.
Hmm.
And if they're like, oh, no, we don't really want to allow that, there's probably a good reason for it. But if this is a place that's proud of their culture and proud of their team spirit and proud of the teams that they're trying to build, they're going to be more than happy to plug you in with people that are existing on the team and let you pick their brain on their experiences there.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, actually. And I don't think a lot of people think about that, asking for additional conversations
Mhm.
outside of the pre planned conversations as part of the process. Just, regular Joe that you want to have a conversation with and get his, thoughts and feelings on it. And
Yeah, talk to the receptionist when you walk in the building and learn her name and see how her day's been, and you'll get a good feel for how that company is being run. Everybody has bad days, but you're not going to find a manager or that's interviewing you that says this place sucks and everybody hates their job here, and you're going to hate it when you come here too. They're going to try to paint it in a light that is attractive, obviously, and so it can, you can be like, great, this is a great place to work. Take the job. 2 weeks later, everybody hates life and the culture sucks. So that's why I'm a huge proponent of trying to interview other members of the team yourself and have conversations with them so you can get a better idea of what the culture is really like.
totally agree. Um, and I would say that a lot of your advice in the book is conventional wisdom.
Mhm.
I don't know if you would agree with that or not. I love that aspect though, because I feel like anyone could pick this book up and implement it. You don't have to have the technical skills. A lot of what you're
Mhm.
talking about is how to go from the floor technician all the way up to the director in
Yeah.
7.5 years. And a
Mhm.
thread that I see a lot in your book is dependability. And I love this because I think this should be key number one. If you're a frontline employee, and you're looking to grow, thinking about dependability and becoming the most dependable person, I think is the fastest way to grow in a company, especially whenever you're at that stage of your career. So, can you talk on dependability a little bit and give some advice around that?
Yeah, that's certainly probably the most, one of the most important things I talk about in that book. And as a manager and a former middle manager, dependability is crucial, man. If you're not dependable, you'll never have opportunities. And this is why. And I talk about this in the book. Let's say that I'm just 2 or 3 minutes late, right? I'm just going to be just a few minutes late. If you're consistently a few minutes late, you're consistently unreliable, right? You're going to be known as the guy that's a few minutes late. And so the questions start arising, why are you a few minutes late? And a company that's trying to grow from within and give people opportunities will certainly ask these questions. Why is Mason a few minutes late? What is keeping him from getting here a few minutes early, right? And if it's, oh, I hit traffic, okay, why don't you get up a little earlier so you miss the traffic? Oh, this happened or this happened or this happened. Why is it that you can't take some self-government and control the variables in your life that are consistently making you a few minutes late? If you can't do those in your personal life, how are you going to do those for this company? And wise employers will look at how people are governing their personal lives and say that's how they're going to manage company dollars, company people, company assets. We can't afford to give them these opportunities.
Mm,
And so your personal life shows, doesn't matter how much you try to keep it a secret. And that's where the dependability factor comes in. If you're always late, you obviously can't manage your personal life.
Yeah. Ugh, so true. It's the little things, especially early on. One quote that I saw here. I'm gonna read this verbatim. I'm not gonna give away the entire book. I would recommend people going to pick it up if they like what they're hearing here. But I really liked this thought. And you said, as a manager, when it came time for employee evaluations, one of the very first things that I did was review the time clock records and see how often an employee was tardy and how many days they missed. If they can't be
Mhm.
trusted to figure out how to beat the morning traffic or how to wake your butt up in the morning, why should I trust you with the additional responsibilities that come with the promotions?
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you, and this is why, how many times, again, it's that mentality of, oh, I'm just a few minutes late. And it shows that person has no regard for, and I say this in the book, we'll just give the whole thing away, that, somebody that's not dependable or time conscious is a thief. Now, time is the most valuable asset that any of us have. Once it's gone, you can't get it back.
yeah.
And so, as a manager, there were things that you're scoping out, you're trying to plan your day. You've got people coming in at certain times to do certain things. And coming from the manufacturing world, where we're providing building materials, for contractors, these are guys that are up at the crack of dawn. They're ready to get on the job. Time is money. Chop chop. I got crews waiting for these materials. They're lined up at the door waiting for us to unlock and turn the open sign on, right? So being 3 or 4 minutes late puts a huge burden on the rest of the team. There are people that need to be doing other things, that can't do those because you're not in your place at the right time.
Mm,
Um, and so, when you're stealing other people's time over and over again, it definitely comes out as a negative effect on you in the long run.
yeah. Another project you got going on is the Crush It podcast.
Mm,
This is a lot of fun, and
yeah.
you, unlike your book, you actually co-produced this with your friend Matt, who you mentioned earlier. How'd you meet your co-host Matt?
Yeah. So me and Matt grew up together. I've known Matt since I was a little kid, and we went to church together, and both of our dads were Baptist pastors. And so, we half hated each other, half loved each other because that's the way we do. And, we weren't that close of friends growing up, really. We just knew each other. We were acquaintances. We were friends, but it's not like we were hanging out all the time. And then as we got older, our success goals and career goals and family dynamic were really similar. And we just kind of started picking up and talking more and bouncing ideas off of each other, and it kind of developed into the Crush It podcast.
Hmm. Did you, growing up where you grew up, was there a lot of focus around professional development and personal development, this kind of self-improvement mindset? What do people
No,
think about your show whenever it got launched?
yeah, no, definitely a lot of skepticism, a ton of skepticism when the show got launched, and I would say some of that still exists. This could be a huge rabbit hole, Justin, that we probably won't go down, as far as the mentality that we had, growing up, and the religious dynamic that factored into that. That's a whole. I'll write that book one day. But I'll say this because I haven't mentioned it. I credit an enormous amount of my leadership skills and drive for success to an organization called Civil Air Patrol, which I was lucky enough to be a part of when I was a kid. And they focus heavily on developing young leaders and pouring into them. It's military style, right? It's Air Force auxiliary, and I was given a grant to go through flight academy there and learn how to fly, and through drill teams and leadership development courses and things like that, those great volunteers poured into me. And so I definitely credit them with a huge part of my leadership development as a kid,
Hmm.
and carried that into my adult life. But outside of that, no, there was not a lot of focus on career success and leadership development, personal development, in the environments that we grew up in.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't think there's a ton of it out there, or maybe people hide it as well. That's why I always love connecting with people like yourself. As soon as we had that initial conversation, I was like, oh, this is a guy I want in my inner circle,
Yeah.
just because you get it. And you might not know everything, but you're very interested in becoming better than the person you were yesterday. And that's a thesis in my life that I really, really like to carry through.
And I'm glad you said that because I definitely don't know everything, dude, and I learn every day. And I think if I had to self-evaluate, I would say one of the most valuable traits I have and that anybody could have, especially with the people I've talked to that echo this, is realizing you don't know everything and having the desire to learn everything. Never stop learning. And I mean, reading freaking books, dude, is so valuable and people miss that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you can buy all the same books that I bought and read these and learn the same information that I learned. Like this is not private interpretation. I didn't join a secret society that told me how to be a young, successful leader. I went to Barnes and Noble and bought a $23 book. I made small investments in myself and it paid off in the long run. So I think having that desire to learn more is huge, huge.
Yeah. It's not hard. I mean, so many people are out there looking for the mentor to guide them through, not realizing that you're right. There's thousands of mentors at Barnes and Noble, and
Mm,
you can download all the information that they learned over a course of a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, in typically 250 pages.
yeah.
And find a title that interests you and just start going. Is there a recommendation for a book for that person that doesn't read very often but wants to start reading? What's one or two books that you picked up early on that were influential to you?
Yeah, I grew up listening to Dave Ramsey. My mom played his radio show in our car, and so he was one of the first authors I got a hold of. I read The Total Money Makeover in high school, and I would recommend Ramsey Press, Ramsey Solutions. They have a ton of books out now, and they're all great. And I'll give them a plug and say their stuff is easy to read.
Mhm.
It's dialed down. It's practical advice for the common man, and it helps you get into some more advanced leadership stuff and business strategy books and things of that nature. It flirts with a lot of those things in a practical way. I really enjoy their books and would recommend them to somebody that's trying to get in to the success in business and leadership kind of stuff.
Do you have a consistent reading habit? I know with two little kids, are you
With two kids,
able?
nothing's consistent, Justin. The only thing that's consistent is somebody's bleeding, crying, or has peed in the floor. So that definitely throws a wrench into. I try to read every day for sure, even if it's a chapter. My reading goals for 2021 are pretty aggressive, I will say. Um, so they vary, and I have to tailor these every month based on what I've got planned for that month. If I'm going to be out of town for a week or two, I have to kind of plan around that. But I most certainly try to get through a minimum of 6 to 10 books a year, and that can be challenging for my schedule. Sometimes I get through more, sometimes I get through less. My books that I read now are definitely larger in volume than the ones I used to read. So 6 to 10 can be pretty challenging.
Hmm. And how do you decide which books to pick up?
Um, if you looked at my nightstand, I just pick them all up. So this is what aggravates me about myself is I can't read one book, dude. I've got like 5 books on my
Mhm.
nightstand right now, and I'm reading all of them because I'm OCD like that. Um, but I usually try to pick a book that is relevant to something I'm facing in my career. And the
Yes.
nature with our business and the way it's growing right now, there's always something new that I need to try to figure out. We're looking at something right now that I can't spill the beans on, but to give you a hint, I'm trying to learn about acquisitions and brand mergers, and so that's something I've never really dove into a lot. So I'm reading into that. I'm trying to learn what acquisitions look like and how people transition one brand from another and seamlessly without, compromising a customer base. And that's all fun and exciting stuff. So that's why I said it's dynamic. My strategy and reading books is dynamic and it changes from month to month based on what I'm looking at doing.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. One thing you talk a lot about on your podcast, and I've heard you and Matt go back on this maybe at least 3 times on the podcast, is this, defining what success is to you. So
Mm.
I would love to hear, if I flip that question around on you, what does success mean to you?
Yeah. So on the outset, defining success is such a huge deal, right? Because you talk about success, I talk about success. Everybody and their mother talks about success. And what does that mean, right? It means something different to everybody. And so, when I started looking at what does success mean for me, um, I'm very legacy minded. And the most influential book I ever read, surprisingly enough, was a Dave Ramsey book called The Legacy Journey. And it talks about, why are you building wealth? Why do you want to race? Why do you want another dollar an hour? What are you going to do with it? And and I started looking at that, and I got 2 kids, and I got a wife, and what am I building here? What's the end goal? And so, I felt a call, because I'm a believer, I'm a faith driven person. And I grew up where people like to go to the soup kitchen and hand out chili, put chili in a bowl and feed the homeless, and donate coats, and all that stuff's great and it's needed, and please do that. But I started looking around, and I was like, who's paying the rent on this building? Like, who bought this chili? Who paid for the spoons? Where did these tables come from? Somebody has to fund this stuff. And so, while the limelight work of being there and putting chili in the bowl and patting the homeless people on the back is certainly needed and good, there's a whole nother element of that, of somebody has to finance these things, for the kingdom, and somebody has to finance good work. And so I felt, as I saw a path in my career, called, and this is definitely controversial, called to build wealth and manage wealth, for a higher purpose. And that's truly how I view the assets that I feel like God gives me, and the money that he trusts me with. I feel like it's his, and he lets me manage it for him. And so if I steward that well, he'll entrust me with more to manage on his behalf. And so as a legacy minded person, I hope to be able to fund those kind of mission works, and help in a financial manner, and build these buildings, and build safe places, and buy the chili, and do build the orphanages, and do the things that aren't necessarily glorious but are absolutely necessary, and then hopefully pass on some sort of empire that my kids can continue to do the same thing with.
Hmm. This is so tempting to bite at this thread right now. The
Yeah.
whole money is the root of all evil. But I'm going to
Yeah.
leave it there because I want to make sure that we can get a couple more questions answered here as we're kind of
Sure.
wrapping up the show. I've heard and maybe it's your Instagram handle on the podcast, but it's definitely seems like the thesis of the show. Do the doubt. What does do the doubt mean?
Hmm. Yeah, so that was one of the first phrases that Matt actually came up with, and I'll definitely give him the credit for it. Um, that we were like, it's kind of you're on the fence trying to make a decision. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Just do the doubt, man. What are you doubting? Just do it. And so it's kind of a go for it. It's the Nike swoosh. Just
Yeah.
do it. It's our version of that. Just do the doubt. And it kind of drove us to take the leap and put ourselves out in the local limelight. Because like I said, the environment that me and him both grew up with, building a platform that we've built, was a little uncomfortable. It wasn't popular in the spaces that we grew up in. So we definitely had to take some sort of a public relations risk with the people that we grew up with, to come out and say some of the things we say and talk about the topics that we address. So we just did the doubt, and that kind of stuck with us a little bit.
I love that so much. And honestly, I think it is one of the primary factors that holds people back from getting the success that they want, is this little voice in their head that creates doubt and
Mm-hmm.
creates roadblocks and allows people not to chase the things they really want to. And I think you can chase a lot of things with security. We were just talking before the show as well that you love the Crush It brand. The podcast is doing well. You have more ideas for books, but you don't mind holding down your day job as well to give you security to allow yourself to feed the family and pursue these passion projects that you have. So I think it's finding that balance and realizing the things that are holding you back from quote, quote, doing the doubt, getting those out of the way and going and sending it really. And I wish there was a little bit more centered or focused around some of these things, because I just see it play, especially young people, myself included, that this is like the most challenging thing. Whenever I press record on the podcast, that first publish of the episode, and you're just like kind of sitting back that first 24 hours, waiting, waiting for what people are going to say, and then realizing, you know what? I got some nice kudos back. I got a couple compliments, but wasn't earth shattering either way. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Life went on. We kept revolving around this thing. It's crazy.
Yeah. And, I think having that perspective is important, and realizing what you're doing a lot of times is beneficial to you, and that's what matters. It's okay to be selfish and develop yourself, right? And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to realize. Don't be a jerk, but it's okay to invest in yourself. And if investing in yourself means putting content out there, then put it out there. We did the Crush It podcast for a while, a good 6-7 months, and didn't really get a ton of feedback, from some family and close friends, but not a ton of public feedback from people we really didn't know. And then we got a message, and it was like, hey, the stuff you're talking about is so important, and it's really helped me. I appreciate you talking about it. And we were like, high fives. It was worth it. Like the whole thing was worth it. And it really was. It felt like, the time that we had invested at that point was significant. And to see one person being helped by stuff that we were talking about validated everything that we had done up until that point. We're like, hey, if we can help one more person in 6 to 7 months, then it's worth it. Let's keep doing it. And, hopefully we've helped more than one or two by now, but that's just the mindset we had early on. That's how we're rolling. That's how we're sending it.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you decided to do the doubt, create the show, create the book. It was awesome. Where can people find the show and find the book, and anything else in terms of social platforms that people could connect with you on?
Yeah. So you can go to masonburchette.com, and it goes to my solo, and solo is like a link tree. And so I've got all my highlighted links, the book, the podcast, and a few other things you may or may not be interested in. My Forbes profile and all that stuff's on there. masonburchette.com will give you the short links to all that stuff.
Cool. And with that, we're going to share your book with one of our, with one listener as well. So if you're interested in, getting Mason's book, just, screenshot this episode, tag us on Instagram. What's your Instagram, Mason?
Burchette Mason.
Burchette Mason, and mine is Justin Lee Peters. So tag the two of us. We'll select one person before my next episode release. So 2 weeks between episode release and the selection piece. So if you want want Mason's book and you can't afford it for some reason, feel free to post and tag us, and we'll definitely put you in on that.
We'll hook you up.
Yeah. So final question that I have for you, if you had the opportunity to teach a 16-week class to a group of graduating seniors on a topic that typically isn't covered in the classroom, what would you teach and how would you teach it?
Financial literacy.
Let's go.
And yeah, I would definitely teach financial literacy. And it would be so practical and have zero fluff that everybody would be like, this guy's telling me stuff I already know. And it's because I think financial literacy handicaps far more people than we realize, and keeps them from their biggest hopes and dreams. Getting your personal finances right is the biggest step into pretty much any goal that you want to hit. If you're broke all the time, you're never going to be able to do anything.
Yeah. I love financial literacy so much. It's so important because I believe if that was taken under control, and
Hmm.
I really do think it's not a long process to get it under control,
Nope.
that it could drastically change your life. What would be one, two, maybe three accomplishments that you would want those students to have completed before the end of the class?
A couple accomplishments before 16 weeks. I would say put $1,000 in the bank of cash that you're not going to touch. It's just going to sit there in case that you blow a tire. And then knock off a couple of small debts. Those are get a few short, quick wins, because there's a lot of emotional connection to money. And if you can get a few short wins and start seeing a snowball effect, it really helps drive your ability to pour more into your personal finances and get stuff buttoned up quicker.
Yeah. Uh, totally agree with that. Mason, we're going to have to bring you back on the show at some point in time to talk all things financial literacy. Anything else that I didn't ask you that you'd like to share?
I would share that your podcast freaking rocks, dude. I want to thank you for investing in the content you're putting out. It provides a ton of value, and I'm definitely going to share more of your stuff out. I've listened to several of your episodes so far and love them. I love your style, and you're killing it, dude. And so congratulations on 1 year and the rebrand and everything
Thank
else
you.
you got going on, man.
Dude, Mason, that is super kind of you to say. I really appreciate it. Ditto right back to you. I think I look at you as a peer. I often try to see what you're up to and gain inspiration from that. So
Same.
I think we were going to have a long-term relationship between the two of us. So let your wife know that she might have some competition. But I am super impressed with you, everything you've done over your career. Hopefully, people have gotten a glimpse of that through this conversation. We talked about your fast rise and some of the factors that led to your fast rise. We didn't directly speak on it, but your cancer journey and the positivity you brought around that, and the mindset you brought in on your cancer journey is definitely something that I hope people were aware of and picked up about you. And so many great tidbits from your book. I love the dependability piece to it. I think if anybody goes out there and grabs your book as well, it's not a long read, but you're going to get a ton of great things that you can bring in to work on Monday and start implementing right away to become from going from an average performer to a top performer. So thanks for creating the podcast. Thanks for writing the book. And of course, thanks for coming on the show, Mason.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you like this conversation today, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified about new episodes. If you want to connect with me, send me a message on Instagram. I'm at Justin Lee Peters. You can find show notes with links to everything we discussed today at justinpeters.co. This episode was produced by Gabby Dymeke. I'm your host, Justin Peters. Thanks for tuning in.